The default says if anybody is trying to ping the firewall, right, or not just ping the firewall on the management, the uh, firewall will do the communication by default on SSH, on HTTPS, and it will respond to the pings, right? This is the default on the management. Whereas on the data interfaces, any of the data interface, right? Ethernet 1/1, 1, 2, 1, 3, any one of them. If you're trying to do any service for for this interface, let's say this is having 10.0.0.1. So anything coming on 10.0.0.1, any packet, right, that is not going to be responded, right? Which means, don't get me wrong, a packet with source, let's say 10.0.0.10, going to the destination 8.8.8.8, whose gateway is 10.0.0.1. This will be passed, okay? This packet goes through the firewall. And the firewall is not going to drop this, right? But if any packet is coming from, let's say, 10.0.0.10 and going to the destination 10.0.0.1, right? Which means now the packet is destined to the firewall, right? The traffic is coming to the firewall. It is not going through the firewall, right? There are two traffics. This is through the firewall and this is to the firewall. So any traffic which is coming, what is this? Sorry, I think I messed up. Oh. So any traffic which is coming to the firewall on these data interfaces is going to be dropped, which means the firewall will not communicate to any IP address on the data ports, right? Any of the data port. It will communicate to the IP addresses only through the management. And same is the true for the communication that is initiated by the firewall. Right? This is coming to the firewall from a particular IP address, right? Now let's say from the firewall, you're trying to check the reachability of internet. You're trying to ping 8.8.8, right? This is from the firewall CLI. So the firewall, you imagine that it is taking, if it were a router, it would take the IP address of the exit interface as the source, right? And the destination is this. Yes or no? Right? But in case of Palo Alto, all of the communication initiated by the firewall is sourced from the management interface by default. Okay, by default, any communication initiated by the firewall is sourced from the management interface. All right, so how do you do the testing for ping 8.8.8? If the management has no connectivity towards internet, then you have to define the source. Right, you have to define the source IP address of this. Let's say it is 100.0.0.1. So you define it like this. Right, the syntax may be the other way around, ping source and then host, whatever we can look at it in this CLI.
Sukesh.
Yes.
Yeah, that stuff that you are explaining about somebody, that computer trying to ping the interface of the firewall, and by default is not allowed, right?
Yes.
Is that the same concept as it is in Checkpoint called the stealth rule?
Yes. Yes, spot on.
Okay.
right? In checkpoint, you have to create a rule for this behavior, right? But here it is taken care of automatically.
Got you.
So this
So
is
Sukesh,
this is for to protect for some kind of like somebody wants to like inside wants to do the denial of service or something like that.
Yes.
Okay.
so Sukesh, Namit here. So this is the reason that firewall hop is not visible in any trace route. Is it so?
Firewall is not visible in where?
Let's say I'm tracing any
In the
device
trace
which
route.
is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
beyond. Yeah.
Yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
Okay.
Right. So how do we get this working? This is a default behavior on all of the interfaces. So what I can do is I trust my internal network, right? I need this for troubleshooting. Let's say I have 10 different VLANs here. I want the gateway to be reachable through ping at least, right? So that if I have to check the connectivity, I can simply ping and check. Life becomes a lot easier with ICMP enabled, right? So I can do that selectively, right? I can do that selectively on interface basis. So how do we do that is uh, through the interface management profile. And you go all the way here down and you create interface management profile. I have created a ping. You simply click on add and it opens up this page. You name the profile and you can put the IP addresses also. The default will look something like this, right? This is the default. So now you can choose from these available services that what do you want to allow. So let's say I choose ping. Now ping from which IP addresses? If I define nothing, it takes any IP address, right? Anybody trying to ping on whichever interface you apply this profile, right? Say this is the profile, for example. Now this profile says allow ping coming from anybody, right? Now you have to apply this profile to interfaces. And these are the interfaces I have applied this to. Applied it to 1/1 and 1/3, right? You don't apply these to the WAN interfaces, okay? It's not that you cannot, uh, you should not.
Management profile means we have to be give a service, which are all requirement service, ping, HTTP, HTTPS, and telnet. That is that's only one, sir.
Right. And somebody had asked me, how do we access if the management interface goes down, right? You can plan your network in such a way that your internal interface allows you SSH onto your management network. Let's say the management network is sitting on 10.00/24 network. So you can plan it like this. So that will still allow SSH onto this interface, right? And this can be applied to all of the interfaces. And of course, you can have multiple profiles. Let's say my requirement for 1/3 is different than what it is on 1/1. So I can have two different profiles for these. Okay. Talking about the management interface being sourced always, you can change that as well. So how do we change that? Is you go under devices, and under devices, you have, where is it? Under services. So under services, you have this service route configuration. Service route configuration means this is the default. Use management interface for all. This is how you will see it on your firewalls, right? When it is right out of the box, you can customize it. And these are the services for which we can customize. right? So even after you have done this and you are trying to ping from the firewall to internet, you may still have to give the source, right? Because you don't see a service for ICMP here, right? You have it for TACAX, you have it for user ID agent, right? You have it for everything else. You have it for Panorama, you have it for DNS, right? So this is done according to the network. Mostly people keep it default unless it is required to change due to season, right? Some reason could be the management interface is not allowed connectivity to internet, right? Your internal management has no visibility to internet. In that case, you have to allow some services for the firewall to work. For example, DNS, and then there are some services. This one, Palo Alto network services, may or may not for Panorama, but for definitely for Palo Alto network services, because this allows the firewall to communicate with the Palo Alto servers for licensing, right? And this URL update, if you're doing URL filtering, all of the database is fetched from the the Palo Alto servers. So it is mandatory for the firewall to have that connectivity. Right now, it doesn't have that connectivity. So you look at the URL database here in the information, it is all 0, 0, right? Because it is not able to communicate. So when it is not able to communicate, the database will not be available. And when it will not be available, you will not be able to do URL filtering. So problems. So long story short, you have to make sure that the firewall can reach its desired services, be it with the management interface or be it with the customized interfaces which have the connectivity. Simple. Any questions now?
So we normally keep this management connected to the internet so that we can get the updates and everything. So like for our iOS updates or whatever thing. So it should be connected, right?
Yes, yes.
Otherwise, we have to install it on external server and then upload it here, right? If management doesn't want anything connected to that one.
Yeah, that's another way.
Sir, can you just explain once more regarding management port and other customized port, where you giving the IP 10.0.0.1 and 10.0.0.1?
You mean in the diagram you're asking the difference?
Yes, difference.
See, the management interface is for the firewall. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk to the firewall, you talk to it on the management interface.
Okay.
Okay. And if you have to protect your traffic, right, which will be going through the firewall, where will that be going through? That will be going through the data interfaces. So every other interface is the data interface. So if this PC is going out to internet through the firewall, this cannot go through the management. It goes through this data interface.
Okay.
Right. So in other words, you can understand that the management is for the traffic which is coming to the firewall, and the other ports are for the traffic which is going through the firewall.
Means every traffic will be managed by management port only, sir.
Yes, management traffic managed by management port only.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, the internet access on the management port is only for the updates. Am I right?
Yes, yes.
And for the service purpose, it will choose the service port, means data port, to access the internet.
Yes.
Any
And you just
in FortiGate firewall, we don't know anything management for FortiGate.
I have no idea about FortiGate.
Sir, and you said one by default rule, it will take all, by default, it will take management port as a source port, right?
Right. So
For
let's
any,
take an example.
for anything.
Yes, yes.
I'm
For
sorry,
any
but just
communication.
explain a little bit.
Sir, can you explain once more
Eventually.
about the source port? Why we choosing source port? Just a little bit confusion in that.
Yes, sir. Same here.
I'll show you.
Same here, sir.
Hold on. Hold on. Sorry, I shouldn't have come here. This is how you ping in Palo Alto. So I'm trying to ping a host 8.8.8. Now, how is this traveling? It is taking the source IP address of the management. Okay, the packet that is going out is trying to go out from the management. Do we have internet connectivity on the management? No. This cloud is only connected to another virtual machine. That's it. Right. So 192.168.1.0 has no internet connectivity. That is why we are not able to ping. Let's take example of Ethernet 1/2. Where is my CLI? I close this and then define the source. I have to check the source first. Show interface. So this is 172.29, 129.242. So I will define the IP address being source 172.29.129.242 and then the host 8.8.8. Now with this command, you are forcing the packets to go out through this interface, right? Which is connecting to internet. Now you're able to communicate. So does it make sense now? Whatever I explained about the management interfaces?
So it's like a gateway, one types of gateway.
Do not change definitions, right? Gateway is something else, right? We use the term gateway for different purpose. Here, the source interface, right? The exit interface of the firewall decides whether you will be able to reach to the destination or no. And by default, all the communication initiated by the firewall tries to go out through the management unless you define the source.
Okay.
Okay, sir, got it.
So we have to assign a particular IP or group IP.
IP. See, yes. I'll say this in Hindi also for you guys, right? जब तक सोर्स नहीं बताओगे तब तक पैकेट मैनेजमेंट के थ्रू जाता रहेगा और मैनेजमेंट को तो इंटरनेट कनेक्टिविटी है नहीं.
Okay.
तो कभी भी पहुंच नहीं पाएगा.
Management port only for modification, so it not passing through firewall.
Right.
Okay.
In this topology, right? But if it had internet connectivity, if the management interface had internet connectivity, you will be able to go out through management without defining the source. ठीक है. अगर मैनेजमेंट के पास इंटरनेट कनेक्टिविटी है तो जाएगा पैकेट, नहीं है तो नहीं जाएगा.
Real in production network, what's scenario, a practical scenario?
वो भी मैंने बताया था कि हर नेटवर्क में अलग होता है. कुछ नेटवर्क मैनेजमेंट नेटवर्क को इंटरनेट एक्सेस देते हैं, कुछ नहीं देते हैं, right? It depends on the compliances.
सर हम लोग राउटर और स्विचेस में फंसे बैठे अभी तक.
Sir,
Okay.
it means every time we have to create the separate source interface to access the internet.
To access, yes, you have to
Yes.
define, you have to know which interface is being used.
Okay.
If we are using any other interface to reach internet as a source, so do we have to enable something like
No, but how will you see if you will have one interface that connects to internet, and that you will have as a source, right? When you have to move out,
CLI for a
see, when you have to move out of your house, you exit through the main door, right? You don't jump out from the first floor through some window.
Sir, there may be different subnets in one DMZ.
Yes, obviously.
In trusted root here in topology, you mentioned E0, E1, .10, .10. But both are connected to one single system only. In 10.0 also, in 192 also.
Right, it is 10.10 and 192.168 1.10.
Means two LAN ports should be connected to a single system only.
Yes.
And Suresh, the IP which you are pinging, see 8.8.8.8, see which IP is that? Is that IP somewhere lies in that untrusted network?
That is the global DNS IP address, my friend. Oh, you should know that.
No, that's okay. I understood his question. But he says that is you are pinging inside the trust that you connected the cloud, or it is untrusted. That's I think he is asking, right? Two clouds are there, huh? One is untrusted side.
Ashmat, can you come back with your question again?
My question was that in that ping request what you sent, see specifically through that untrusted interface, okay?
Right.
That destination IP which is 8.8.8. What was that? See what was that destination? Was that see some host in that untrusted network?
Yes, that is a public IP address of a global DNS. Right, there are these always available destinations like 8.8, 4.2.2, 1.1.1.
Can we directly ping trust to DM and DMZ zone from management port?
From management port, you're trying to, I didn't understand. From management port of what? Firewall?
Firewall Ethernet 1/3 port 172.16.0. बट यू सेड ना कि वहां से पैकेट सोर्स मतलब डेस्टिनेशन से सोर्स तो आ जाता है बट सोर्स से दोबारा मतलब डेस्टिनेशन से सोर्स नहीं जाता है.
Are you talking about interzone communication?
Yes.
Okay, we haven't spoken about that yet. Hold it.
Okay.
All right, so that's about it. Coming back to the interfaces. Okay, there are multiple different type of interfaces available. You have TAP, HA, virtual wire, layer 2, and layer 3. TAP interface is like span port. Do you guys know spanning?
Yeah. We do have
Yes,
idea.
sir. Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Where you can
Capture the traffic.
connect a laptop and capture the traffic. You define the source and destination of the span port, and then a copy of that will be given to you through the tap. Okay, so it is for that purpose. But honestly speaking, there is an inbuilt packet capture onto the firewall, so you don't need this interface. Okay, so whatever flow you are trying to capture, you can do a packet capture onto the firewall itself. HA is obviously for HA when two firewalls they connect to each other in an active standby format. The interface will be the connecting interface between the two firewalls. Then you have virtual wire. Virtual wire is something which bypasses all the checks, right? And your firewall becomes as good as a wire. Okay, nothing is checked. Becomes like a dumb device. Why would you want to do that? Because let's say you have two domains here, a layer 3 network is there, and you want to place your firewall in here into the network directly. So what you can do is you will have to create those virtual wires, and that's how the default configuration of the firewall comes in. If you put it in your network, it will simply act like a virtual wire. Packets will come in, go out without anything stopping it, right? And without any disruption to your services. But don't do this like right out of the box. First verify. Sometimes you may get an old device, right, with a perfectly new service warranty with some configuration in it, and it may disrupt your service. But anyway, this is how the virtual wire functions. Again, you make it like a pair, that this particular port and this particular port will be virtual wires. So you configure it. So internally, they behave like as if they are connected to each other. Okay.
So,
in case, yeah.
Sorry. A firewall deployed as a virtual mode, can it still filter the packets? Can you put policy on it, even if it is deployed as a virtual?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can keep it in the virtual wire mode and start configuring your firewall. Once you're ready, you can change the properties of these interfaces and the firewall will start intercepting the traffic.